Welcome back. You're watching the live coverage here on Republic TV of the train accident in Odisha's Balasore. We are now reporting from a high school turned temporary morgue where most of the bodies were kept until this morning. So what is also happening, and the biggest challenge is that in the last 24 to 36 hours since the accident took place, most of the bodies were either charred or dismembered or beyond recognition. And until a few hours ago, most of the bodies were here. Let me take you here and show you, because this is a school which was turned into a morgue because it is one close to the accident site. This is where all the bodies were kept. But the families of all of these victims are coming here from different parts of the country. Some of them that we met on the way are here from Odisha, some from West Bengal, and some from other states as well. From Andhra Pradesh, we saw a few families. Now they're looking for their loved ones because they don't know where to go, where to look for their loved ones or the remains of their loved ones. Basically, this is a school. It's a high school which was turned into a morgue, and about 150 bodies were kept here until this morning. And most of the bodies have now been moved to the Balasore Medical Hospital, and this entire premises is now being sanitized as we speak. But still, families continue to come outside, and they're asking questions. They're trying to find their loved ones, and the biggest challenge here is for them to recognize and identify these bodies. Now, for those supervisors who've been here for the last 24 to 36 hours, the biggest challenge has been on the identification process. And forensic tests are also being conducted. That's one option. That's one way of identifying the bodies. They've been going from one body bag to the next, sort of opening those body bags, trying to identify their family members. And we are hearing that out of the 156 who are here, 156 bodies that were here, they were just able to sort of identify about 25 to 30 based on the features of their family members. But for the rest of them, over 120, 130, many of them charred beyond recognition. So that's another challenge that they're now facing here. Once again, this is the Bahanaga school, and it's going to be a challenge for the families who continue to come here in large numbers, and they're trying to look for their loved ones. And the only way that they can do that is one, they need to do some. They're trying to do some tests to check for the identification. And the second way they're going to identify them is through their belongings, because a lot of belongings that were left behind in the train, either the mobile phones or the bags, etc. It's very difficult to try and match that now, because just the bodies were brought here while all the belongings were left on the tracks. So that's another way of identifying. But the third way of identification is the forensic tests that they plan to do. And after they do those tests and identify the bodies, they're handing them over. Once they're convinced that the bodies belong to that particular family, they're being handed over, and then the process, of course, of the compensation, etc., begins. So that's been the challenge in the last 24 to 36 hours. So most of the bodies that were brought here were from the first initial hours, which means the first bodies that were pulled out mostly from the reserved compartments, the bogies with the highest impact, and at least 100, 120 bodies were completely charred, we are told, because of electrocution as well. Because after the derailment happened, after the bogies went off the tracks, skidded off the tracks, and after the collision, there was electrocution on some of the bogies that was also reported, because of which some of the bodies were completely charred. And you just heard the Union Railway Minister. There's a temporary helipad that has been set up here that we are walking past. But let me also tell you that we've had a comment come in from the Union Railway Minister, who has ruled out the role of Kavach in this accident, saying that that's not the reason why this accident took place. Now, he has also said, and I'm reading out what Ashwini Vaishnav has said. Ashwini Vaishnav has said that it was because of electronic interlocking. He says it's because of electronic interlocking. He says it has nothing to do with Kavach. He says it's not the reason that Mamata Banerjee was mentioning yesterday, adding that this took place due to change in electronic interlocking. So what we will now do is we will play out what Ashwini Vaishnav said, and get you a couple of reports that we've been filing from ground zero here at the accident site and the other hospitals where the families are now. The painful process, it is an extremely painful process for them now to go from one hospital to another. You know, some of them coming here, you can still see them there waiting outside a high school turned morgue where most of the bodies were placed, and now these bodies have been taken to other hospitals to be placed. And graphic details, but one of the challenges they were facing here is because of the heat here, because of the heat in Balasore. They found that in the last 24 hours or 36 hours, the bodies that were kept here had no sort of air conditioning, for example. So the bodies were rotting, and that is why they had to move most of these bodies to the medical hospitals, which are anyway stressed because of the sheer number of patients that are being brought in. So there is not enough space to place these bodies. So now, in the last few hours, they found a way to move these bodies to the other medical hospitals so that the process of identification can formally begin. So I'd like to first play out what the Union Railways Minister said. He's been here, he's still camping here. So what we will do after this is we will walk towards the tracks and give you an update of the situation this morning. He's been stressing that it's not because of Kavach. He says it's because of electronic interlocking. He used a term called electronic interlocking. So we'll get a few experts on that as well, on what electronic interlocking means and what went wrong and why the two trains, went to the loop line and how the accident took place. We are getting into the details of that today. Here's what the Union Railways Minister said, and we'll get you a report from the tracks in just a few minutes.